So here we go. Perfect. Rachel, for one moment, I'm going to start with Spotlight. Hello, everyone. You have reached Kweller Prep Tutoring. Guess what we're learning today? Today, we are learning about Stony Brook Community College. No, we're learning about the QuestBridge Scholarship opportunity. So I'm very excited about this moment. Here's to a really fun webinar, and I will let you take over from here. We are so excited. I didn't advertise this part, but we have the big shots, the biggest of the big shots. Farwa and Raj are here. They are both QuestBridge winners, finalists. They have been very successful with their college journey. And we have Rachel, who is going to super impress. No pressure on you, Rachel. But she's going to discuss everything we need to know about QuestBridge. Rachel is actually one of the leads at the QuestBridge scholarship search and match. So she's going to really give us the nitty gritty for the first 30 minutes. And then Farwa and Raj are going to speak about their own personal journeys. So stay tuned. There is no bathroom break. There is no rest. We are going to go straight for 1 hour. I will be on mute and in the background. And I'm looking forward to a really great webinar. Okay, everyone, here's to an excellent learning moment. Rachel, I'm putting you on Spotlight. Please feel free to tell us everything we need to know about Stony Brook University. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, everybody. Okay, we're going to learn about QuestBridge. Okay, go ahead, Rachel. I'm listening. I'm just on mute in the background.
Don't worry. Okay, thank you everybody for coming and joining. My name is Rachel Fishbein. I am a staff member here at QuestBridge. I am specifically on the high school outreach team. And so one of the things that we really focus on is everything with the application when students apply in high school. I specifically work with community-based organizations across the country, and then also with educators and do a lot of the presentations. I'm from New York City. I live in New York City. And in fact, many years ago when I started in my first role at QuestBridge, I actually spent a lot of time visiting high schools in New York City. So I don't do as much in-person presentations anymore, especially because now there's Zoom and a lot of other platforms that you can access kind of from everywhere. But I'm very familiar with New York City. And so I'm excited for you all to be here and listening to what I have to say. I will say that this is a version of the webinar, the How to Earn a Full Ride webinar that's coming out in a couple of weeks. So we're going to do kind of a short version because I know that Raj and Farwa are going to share their own experience, which is something that I'm really excited that you all have the opportunity to hear. But that's going to be that I'm going to kind of smush some pieces in. So I think if you leave with anything, it should be that any information that you're looking for can probably be found on our website as well. So this is kind of like a brief overview. I'm going to hit some of the pieces. I'm really only going to speak for about 20 minutes, 15 even, because I want to get any of the like kind of nitty gritty questions in, but I'm not going to speak a lot about the experience because I know that they're going to speak about that after. So Raj and Farwa, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen and you're just going to let me know that it works. All right, are we good? Yes? Excellent. Okay. So introduction to QuestBridge and the National College Match. I am guessing, because I know that there have been many students that have come through Kweller Prep that have gone on to QuestBridge before. You're probably from a variety of schools in the city. Many of you have probably already heard about QuestBridge. So just to give you kind of a very quick, we're going to like push through all of these. QuestBridge has been around since 1994. And it first started as a college partner in 2003. We have, it started with 3 schools, 2 of which are Rice and Amherst, which are still with us today. And we've now grown to 52 college partners. There are now over 30,000 scholars and alumni. And one of the reasons that that's really exciting is because that number has grown and grown and grown as more students have come on. So when we originally started, there wasn't a lot of programming, for example, for alumni. Now we have a much more robust alumni program. There's more available for QuestBridge scholars, but it all kind of starts for the National College Match. We have 52 of the top colleges in the country. Usually I ask everybody to guess, but these schools I think should be pretty impactful for everybody here because the 2 new schools this year are Skidmore and Cornell. And Cornell is my alma mater, so I was particularly excited when they joined. But I will also tell you that going to college is a really great opportunity to try to go somewhere else. I came back to New York. I went to Cornell. I went to Stanford for graduate school, so all the way on the other side of the country. And I did come back, right? I'm very happy to be here, not going anywhere else. But taking the time during college to go visit and go live somewhere else when you have a community kind of set up for you is a really great opportunity to try something different. People always come back to New York City. There's always going to be a place and lots of opportunities here, but this is the time to kind of cast a wider net. And one of the questions that I get, especially from students in really popular cities, right? New York City is one of them. Boston, Chicago is kind of how do I make myself stand out? How do I make it more likely to be matched to the college? And honestly, the biggest answer is look at all of these schools, not just the ones that your high school is already sending students to. Look at the larger list, those schools that you don't know. It's not because they're not excellent schools. It just means that maybe there aren't a lot of students from your high school that are going, but you know that any school that's on this list is going to have a large selection of students who are traveling there, who are there on full scholarship. And so you would not be the only ones that are there on full aid. There'll be a QuestBridge Scholars Network there to support you. And you might be a little bit more interesting coming from New York if they're getting a little bit fewer applicants from the New York City area. So it's something to consider. I'm not going to talk about the College Prep Scholars Program today. It's connected to the National College Match, but if you applied and were accepted, that's wonderful. It doesn't guarantee you're going to be accepted to the National College Match. If you applied and were not accepted, that's okay. You don't have to be accepted in order to apply or be successful with the National College Match. It's a connection, but it's not the full story. Students who are selected as finalists for the National College Match and then enroll in a college partner go on to the QuestBridge Scholars Network at their college. And then when they graduate, they move on to the Alumni Association. We're going to talk today about the National College Match and the benefits of the match. I don't like clicking one at a time. I think it's easier to kind of see everything at once. The biggest benefits of the National College Match are the full 4-year scholarship with no loans or parent contribution. So that is, if a student is matched, it's not something that's guaranteed. We'll talk a little bit more about the numbers in a little while. The match is essentially a multi-school early decision process where you can be considered for early admission to up to 15 college partners. Fun fact, Farwa and Raj, I don't know when you went through this, but it used to be 8 schools and then it was 12 schools and now it's 15 schools. That's one of the ways that things have kind of changed a little bit from year to year. One of the pieces of confusion is that you are not required to rank colleges. It is highly recommended, but you do not have to rank colleges and you do not need to rank a certain number of colleges. The important piece about ranking is any school that you rank, you need to be ready to attend because all of the schools except for MIT, but all of the schools -1 are binding. And so that means if you are listing that school, you are ranking that school, you are planning to attend, and it's a big problem. It doesn't look good if you decide to pull out at the last minute. So really take this list seriously. There are multiple opportunities for admission, whether you are matched or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And as I shared, anybody who is applying, who is a finalist, ultimately, if they are admitted and enroll at a college partner, will be a QuestBridge scholar. So to match means to be admitted early with a full 4-year scholarship. The way the process works is students apply. The application is open now. The application is due on September 26th. And these are all pieces of information that are available online, but not necessarily in a neat little package. So the application is due on September 26th. When you submit your application, you are submitting it directly to us, but it is your full college application. There's a essay, there are teacher recommendations, your transcript. All of these components that you would have in a regular application are in the QuestBridge application. And one of the pieces of confusion is once you submit that application to QuestBridge, that's it. So do not think that you're going to be updating that application later on. So make sure that what you're submitting to QuestBridge on September 26th is ready to go. And it is going to be going, in theory, to all of the colleges. We then, in the end of September and the first half of October, review every single application. We decide if you are both academically and financially ready to move forward with QuestBridge. So if you are not selected as a finalist, it does not mean you have been rejected from any school. It simply means you cannot move forward with QuestBridge. And even there are some ways that you could, but for the purpose of this presentation, let's say that's the end of the road for QuestBridge. You'll find out on October 16th. That is so early because we want you to have an opportunity to still be able to apply early decision directly if you are not a finalist. If you are a finalist, you will already have been kind of moving forward with the process with QuestBridge, and we'll go on from there. But I do want to, we'll talk about it here. So I said the application is open. It's due on September 26th. Now, I imagine some of you guys might go to a charter school or a private school, but I'm assuming most of you are in public school in New York City, I have 2 kids in elementary school, and they don't start until the Thursday after Labor Day. If you ask people that are in Florida, they start school like the second week of August. So you really need to be on top of it when you're thinking about, are you applying? Who's writing your recommendation? Have you connected with your guidance counselor? Because you have very little time after school starts to get these pieces together. So you really need to be ready in a way that students that are in other parts of the country that go back to school earlier don't have to worry about in the same way. So on September 26th, your application is due. It is 11:59 Pacific Standard Time, which is 2:59 a.m. on September 27th Eastern Time. And I can tell you that there are going to be staff members answering any last minute questions, but please do not wait until the last minute to submit your application. On October 10th is when you will submit your rankings. So you submit your rankings before you find out if you're a finalist. And we could go through all that, but we don't have enough time. It's just the way it is. On October 16th, all applicants will be notified whether they are a finalist or not. So don't email and say, I didn't get an email. You did. Check the email. If it's not the email you regularly use, email QuestBridge now. We can tell you how to change that email because you want to have access to that email. Anybody who is a finalist needs to submit any supplemental materials directly to the colleges that they ranked by November 1st. Match day this year is on December 2nd because December 1st is over the weekend. It's a little bit different. And it's a crazy week, right? Because Thanksgiving's right before. The timing does not work out so well. For students that are matched, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Withdraw if you have already submitted any regular decision apps. That's when you would withdraw. If you are not matched, you can take December 2nd and be upset. That is fine. On December 3rd, get your list together of what you're going to do next, because honestly, it does not matter in the long run how you end up at school, as long as you end up at a great school with excellent financial aid. That's the most important piece. When you get to the college campus, nobody's going to care if you matched, if you got an ED, EA, REA, off the wait list, it doesn't matter. If you are not matched, you will have until December 9th to fill out the QuestBridge regular decision form. What that will mean is confirming that any schools that you ranked, you still want to have them consider your application for regular decision. Any additional QuestBridge schools that you were not ready to commit to, but you are ready to consider for regular decision, you would add those schools to your list. And then there are various regular decision timelines based on each individual school. All of that is on our website under the individual school as well. Regardless, if you are ultimately a finalist and then you are selected, a finalist, and then you ultimately are accepted and enroll in a QuestBridge College Partner, you are a QuestBridge Scholar. It does not matter how you got there. And then an alum when you graduate. Matching, I think this is probably pretty self-explanatory. It really includes everything. And here's an example. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through this, but I can tell you that if you go onto our website, you can look under the under the financial aid tab for each individual college, and they will show you what the match package is for their school. So this is the Colorado College. The updated information for this coming year is coming shortly, but it's generally pretty similar. And you'll see that the vast majority is scholarships and grants. There is a work study piece here. Some of the match packages do not include any work study. Rice University is one of them. So if you as a student are saying, I can't have any financial expectation, which by the way, in life is pretty, is not realistic, right? But if you don't want any financial expectation, look at every single one of our schools and look at the ones that have no summer contribution, right? But even so, the work study and the summer contribution ends up being about $4,000 of money that you would have earned at another time. Or if you are Jack Kent Cook, let's say you got a CACNY scholarship, your Koch scholars, any of those things can also be used to fulfill that difference. And that is spending money that is not tuition, room, or board money. So you can find out more about that online, and I'm going to keep going to push through these pieces. You must rank colleges to participate in the match. You can rank up to 15 colleges, as little as 0. Last year, I'm going to get this number not 100%, so I'm going to say this is an estimate. We looked up the students who had matched had ranked somewhere around an average of 8 schools, right? So don't say, I only want this one college and this is what I'm going to rank. You can do that, but that's not really the point of the program. And if everybody did that, everybody's not going to get in, right? And I will tell you personally, as I went to look at different graduate schools across the country, there were a number of schools that I wasn't necessarily familiar with, including schools that are driving distance from New York City, that I would have applied to if I had known about them, and I just didn't, right? So look at that whole list right now. Process in the timeline. When you rank colleges, if you rank colleges, as I said, you can rank as little as 0, you can rank as many as 15. If you are a finalist, all of the colleges will concurrently review your application. They will not know what number you ranked them. They won't know if you ranked them number 1, number 15, or anything in between. If you are matched to the highest ranked school that also selected for you to match with them. You are only matched to a maximum of 1 school. And if you are matched, you are required to attend, with the caveat that MIT is not binding. So you could, in theory, apply to additional schools, regular decision, if you're matched to MIT, but you cannot do that earlier. To give you a scenario, if a student ranked 15 schools in this order, all 15 schools would read that student's application. In this case, let's say Colby, Skidmore, and Denison said, hey, we want to match to the student. The student would be matched to Colby because it was the highest school on their list. If they actually were really excited about Rice, it doesn't matter because all of these schools are higher on their list. So the order in which you rank schools matters. After you submit your rankings by October 10th, you will potentially have the option to change the order of your rankings before November 1st. And you can remove schools if you decide there's a school you're not excited about. But that October 10th deadline is a firm deadline, and you cannot add any additional schools. So if you are excited about a school, but you're not sure if you can get the supplements in, rank the school. You can always withdraw if you have to, but you cannot add extra schools. And if you forget to submit your rankings form, you are not allowed to add it later on. It is a very firm deadline. Last part that I'm going to kind of go through, how to stand out as a candidate. We're looking for high achieving students who have experienced long-term financial hardship. The qualifications between the College Prep Scholars Program and the National College Match are very similar. So if you are a college prep scholar, it's generally what we're looking for. You have to be enrolled in you have to live in the United States, whether you are documented or not, or if you are outside of the United States, then you have to be a US citizen or a permanent resident. But anyone who is here attending high school in the United States is eligible to attend, regardless of your citizenship status. We are looking for students that are taking the most challenging courses available. Don't worry so much about the ranking if you go to a very competitive college, high school in particular, because rankings kind of are ranking within the class, right? So I wouldn't worry about that piece. I also would take the test score with a grain of salt, because you may already know this, but when they made schools test optional, the students that submitted their scores were generally the students that had really, really, really high scores. Now that additional schools are requiring test scores again, you're going to see that number expand. Okay, so don't look at that and say, I have a 1260, I shouldn't be submitting that score. That's not what you should be thinking at this time. Okay, it's something that you really need to consider. You are not required to submit a test score to apply to QuestBridge, but I will tell you that some of the colleges that a lot of students in this room are probably planning to rank are now requiring test scores. So you need to figure that out. Our information is not updated yet, so look up the specific information for the college. We're also looking for strong writing. Our income for a household of 4 is typically $65,000 or less annually, and that is across the United States. We have thousands of students that apply from New York City, and I can't tell you the exact number off the top of my head, but many of them who are successful. So I know we get questions about cost of living. This is the average income for our families, but it is for a household of 4. So if you have additional members in your household, and it's not who is claiming whom on your taxes, it is who is living in your household. So if you have a grandparent or grandparents or aunts or uncles or additional older siblings or cousins or nieces or nephews who live with you in your household under the roof of your parent or guardian, they are included in your household, okay? As well as older siblings who are currently in college. So that's something to consider as well. That number goes up when there are more people in that household. The other piece that I see actually more often than not in New York City is we have students where maybe their family owns a home, but they share it with another family. There are additional information sections in our application where you can explain any of those pieces. If it is unclear, please explain the situation. We read all of those additional information sections as we're going through the application. We really do read the whole thing. So if something's unclear, make sure that it's there. These are the components of our application. I know that Raj and Farwa are going to go through this. So I'm going to skip this, but I am going to go to this, which is a couple of updates that are new for the 2024 National College Match. First, and this is something to share with your educators, especially if are coming from a school that has had QuestBridge students before. The application is due on September 26th. Please encourage your teachers and your guidance counselor to submit that recommendation by September 26th. But their recommendations and teacher report are due by Thursday, October 3rd, which is a week later at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have never explicitly announced that extension this far in advance. The reason that I'm saying this really carefully is there is no further extension. That is the very end of the deadline for teacher recommendations, school reports, all of that, okay? So it is a week after the students, but that is a hard and fast deadline, okay? So you can let your educators know, but the earlier they submit it, the better. There's one personal statement essay, not 2 essays. One 800-word personal statement essay. Does it need to be 800 words? No. Should it be 500 words? No. There's a guideline. It's for a reason. When you write your essay, please tell your friends you have no idea who is reading this essay. The idea of the essay is to share with colleges how you will end up being a good addition to their college campus. So if you are sharing personal information, please know that ultimately they're reading this to see, are you going to be a good member of this community? Will you add to the community? What sort of experience will you have in the community? Do not be stuck in the past. Do not complain why you didn't get into a certain high school, which I swear I have read on New York City applications before. I'm not joking. Do not confess a whole bunch of things that are going on. Don't talk about romantic relationships truly unless it really has to do with your future at this college campus. Be thoughtful about all of the different potential people that could be reading your essay, okay? People ask all the time, what should I write about? There are some examples of what you should not write about. In the activities section, there is no longer a college prep place. So if you are very involved, maybe you volunteer at Kweller Prep and you have gone there for many years, or you are involved in SEO Scholars or Minds Matter or something else, put it under one of your activities or under an honor if you had to apply. If it's important to you, you don't have to include it, but we wanted to make the application a little bit shorter, so that's why that's been removed. The other thing, there is an optional video. It is optional. It is not extra credit, okay? There's a lot of information on our website, and through the application, there's a link that talks a lot more about some recommendations about the video, so I'm not going to go into detail. I will tell you, we did this as an option for the College Prep Scholars Program, and students ran the gamut from sharing a little bit more about themselves to performing to everything in the middle. But just like the essay, everybody that receives your application will be reviewing your video. Okay, so be thoughtful. You don't have to submit one. It is not required. But if you are going to do it, don't just, do something that adds on to your application, not that repeats what is already there. Okay, and you can be creative, but if you don't want adults in your school to see it, don't submit it. That's the kind of like being real disclaimer here. If you are seniors, this is just, we talk about a college prep curriculum. You haven't started your senior year. If you look at this list, you should have 5 core subject classes all through your senior year. And if your school doesn't offer more than 2 years of foreign language, are you taking college now? Are you self-studying for an AP exam? Are you taking engineering or psychology or economics? What are you doing to make sure that you still have a full college preparatory curriculum? Benefits of applying. The most important thing that I want to say here that I did not say before, when you apply to QuestBridge, if you are a finalist, you do not have to pay to submit an application to any of the individual schools. So for your ranking, even if you only want to rank 5 schools, right? Let's say each of those applications is $50. That's $250 that you saved. Let's say you are not matched. Then you look at that list of schools and you say, hey, Caltech and Pomona, that sounds fabulous, but I haven't gotten a chance to visit, but they sound really cool. I want to go to Southern California. I'm going to put those down in my regular decision. You don't have to pay an application fee for those schools either. Cast a wider net. For regular decision, the scholarship is not guaranteed, but because we have accepted students as finalists based on their academic and their financial credentials, most of our students are receiving excellent financial aid, even during regular decision, sometimes full aid, but often excellent financial aid. And no matter how you get in, if you are a finalist and you enroll in a QuestBridge College Partner, you are a member of the QuestBridge Scholars Network. You're a member of the Alumni Association. The last thing, I'm not going to go through all of this. I did want to show you this. This information is on our website too. We had over 20,000 students that applied, that submitted an application. 6,683 students that were selected as finalists. 34% of them matched. Most of our college partners have acceptance rates in the teens and the 20%, right? This number of matching is higher than the majority of our college partners' acceptance rates. The more schools you rank, the higher likelihood it is for you to receive a full scholarship. And I will tell you, the vast majority of students, QuestBridge or not, that end up going to whatever college that they listed end up being happy at that college, okay? Even if it wasn't your top choice, all right? My husband, who attended a QuestBridge school, applied early to a QuestBridge school and was rejected. This is before QuestBridge existed. Applied early to another QuestBridge school and was rejected. Ended up enrolling at a QuestBridge school that was not even on his radar and absolutely loved it. And it was like the best opportunity for him. So just because you haven't heard about a school yet doesn't mean it's not an excellent choice. Gonna skip these. I'm gonna take 5 minutes of questions. But as questions come in, if it's a question that you can easily find on the website, I'm not going to answer it because I want to make sure I'm going to sign off then. And I want Farwa, and Raj to share a little bit about their experience. So looks like all of these details are addressed in the webinar. Actually, Raj and Farwa, can you think of anything that was confusing, either when you went through this process or as students are applying and reaching out, that it might be helpful for me to touch on in these last couple of minutes? If not, I can kick through here. I'm going to do some frequently asked questions. Here's a big one. Can I apply early? And interrupt me if something comes up. Can I apply early to other colleges while applying to the National College Match? There is an early application policy. I'm assuming you're all in New York City, so this is what I'm going to say, or New York State, this is what I'm going to say. You can apply, and this is on our website, to your in-state public non-binding school while you are ranking colleges. So a non-binding CUNY or a non-binding SUNY within New York State, assuming you're a New York State resident, you can submit your application in the fall. Maybe your whole school, your whole grade does it, something like that. But if you are matched, you immediately have to withdraw those applications. What you cannot do is you cannot apply to NYU, which is in-state but not public. You cannot apply to a SUNY Binghamton binding because that's in-state public, but it's binding. And you cannot apply to the University of Michigan, which is public, but not in-state. Okay? So in-state, public, non-binding, you can do that at the same time that you're ranking schools. If you are not matched, you can apply anywhere and everywhere. Okay, so it's only in the beginning that it's binding is binding is binding. That's one of the questions that comes up. We already talked about this. That's the big one. Any other last minute questions before I head on out? So if you have any questions, first look on the website. We have a very, 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 let me see if I can do it quickly.
Everyone type thank you in the chat box because Rachel did this on her free time and free will. I really want to stress she's not getting paid even one penny. This is straight up volunteering because I sent 100 emails. No, I'm kidding. But I just want to say type thank you in big bold letters for giving this time. Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. I see one question that came up. It says essays are usually 650 words. Should they be edited for QuestBridge? Absolutely. I can't believe that there isn't more that you have to say. Last thing, Ask QB. Most of the questions that you have, if you click on this, there are a million questions that we have all vetted and that have answers about submitting the application. What are we considering? All of that. But if your question is not answered here, you can always email questions@questbridge.org. And don't wait till the last minute. And I might be the person answering your question. And I know it's a lot of work, but ultimately at some point you're going to get into an excellent school, hopefully with excellent aid. And I will tell you that college is wonderful. And I would do it again if I could. So on that note, have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, keep cool, and good luck.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone take 1 minute. We're going to do this just for a moment. And then Raj, we're going to mute everyone. Ready, everyone? I'm going to take you off mute. We're going to say thank you. Ready? Everyone get off mute. Say thank you. I'm going to count to 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
You are very
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, Raj, go mute everybody. Okay, Raj, you can extend the webinar. Okay, go ahead. You can extend.
Okay, awesome. So that was the first section of our webinar. We wanted to preview how the application worked with Rachel, who is a full-time staff member at QuestBridge. Now Farwa and I are going to preview our experiences going through the application. And I have screenshots directly from my application when I submitted it. So you guys will get a direct sneak peek into some of the material that I prepared for the application. So I'm going to share my screen. And Farwa, can you give me a thumbs up if you see? Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So Rachel covered this briefly, but the application itself has a few different components. So the first section is going to be information on academics, extracurricular activities, and then your household and financial background. There's a writing section as well. You need one recommendation from a teacher in a core academic subject, current high school transcript, any standardized test score reports that you've taken, that your student has taken. And nowadays, there's some schools that are test optional. So just be aware of what schools that you're interested in and the requirements that those schools pose for standardized tests. And then there's also a school profile that you can submit, but that's optional. And generally, there are similar components to the Common App, but the QuestBridge application itself is unique And the profile and the portal through which you're going to submit a lot of these requirements is also specific to the QuestBridge organization. So you're going to have to submit these materials separately from the materials that you submit through the Common App or the Coalition app. And I know someone asked a question about a 650 word essay. So that's usually the length of the personal statement. I think that it's wiser to not reuse your personal statement or to reframe at least your experiences for the QuestBridge application. Even though the word limit is larger, I think there's different ways that you can frame yourself to QuestBridge that will highlight parts of who you are in ways that the personal or the personal statement on the Common App doesn't exactly focus on. And so our recommendation is to not reuse your personal statement and to construct a unique piece of writing for your QuestBridge essay. And so generally for the application breakdown, we went over most of this, but there's a few aspects. So now there's a 90-second video component that you can also record. And so that's something new that Farwa and I didn't have in our applications. And then also in my year, standardized tests were required. So that was another kind of new caveat that's been added in recent years. And the written section has also changed. And you guys can find more information on that on their website. But yeah, so the first section is just household background. So this is where you're going to provide some details on who you are, who's in your household, whether you have siblings, are those siblings in school, are they working full time, what are your parents up to, where are they from, what is your cultural, ethnic, religious background, just questions trying to get a sense of who you are in the household and community that you come from. And then the next section is going to be previewing your academic background. And so the first part of this is including or detailing the classes that you're taking in your senior year. And so I took a few AP classes and I took a few electives that were required for me to finish off my high school credits. But generally, this is a breakdown of like where I go to school, what classes I was taking, anything regarding my academic performance. I wrote a little, I wrote a blurb about my time at a summer program where I was able to expand on a lot of the core STEM curriculum that my school offered. And I also included honors that I'd received through high school. So this was a set of academic awards in some of my classes, accolades through my tennis team, and then also a Best Delegate Award through a Mall UN conference. And so there's a lot of background they're trying to get just about who your student is and what they're interested in, and then also what they're up to throughout their senior year and what they have been up to throughout high school. And then this is a standardized test section. So these are my actual test scores, by the way, from when I applied. And so I just want to like emphasize to you guys, like, yes, these are great test scores. At the same time, I got a 4 in one of my AP exams. At the time, I was a little bit concerned because I was like, is that going to impact how colleges view me? At the end of the day, it didn't. And I think one thing that I learned through the process was that it's okay if you're not a perfect student. Like you want to challenge yourself and you want to do the best that you can on your exams. It's okay if you don't ace everything, because you can complement, getting a 4 or getting, somewhat of a grade that you're not as happy with on a test with an extracurricular. You can complement it with another facet of your application. Yeah, Farwa, is there anything you want to add?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think it's oftentimes college applications can seem like that it's all just a numbers game. It's really just not that. It's a very holistic review. So I wouldn't say don't stress too much about your test scores.
Yeah. And then going forward, so also kind of going back to this section, test scores are, again, they're not required for every school. So just be aware of what schools you're applying to and if they require test scores. And then in terms of transcripts, you're just going to have, this is usually provided by your guidance counselor. And so you're going to have a record of your students' academic performance throughout high school. And so it's going to be a preview of each semester, what classes they took, what grade they achieved, and then how many credits they got for that class. And so usually this is just a good preview for QuestBridge to understand how your student has performed throughout classes, what classes they've taken, and if they're on track to graduate in terms of credits they've earned. And then the next section that we're going to preview is the extracurricular section. So for this is very specific to each student's profile. So I spoke about 5 activities that I was involved with. So and I listed these very carefully in order of importance, in order of also time that I had committed to each of these activities. And so the first one was for context on myself, my parents own a small business. It's a greeting card retail store. And so I helped them out throughout my time in high school. I would go there every weekend and spend a few hours just like manning the cash register, helping them change up inventory, helping out with financial accounting, and doing a few other tasks for them. I also helped on making them a website. And so that was kind of the core activity that I wanted to highlight in my application. And then a few others that I was also involved in. I played tennis for a really long time. I've been playing since I was around like 6, on and off. And then I was on my school's tennis team. And so that was something else I wanted to highlight. And I would have been co-captain in my senior year, but because of COVID, our season was unfortunately canceled. But I also covered that throughout my application. And then there are a few other extracurriculars that I was involved with. So I was a volunteer at a Hindu temple in Queens. I was also a member of my school Spanish Honor Society, and then I was treasurer my senior year. And then I was a member of the Mal UN team. And then I went to a few conferences through Mal UN. And then the last thing they ask here is to describe an activity that represented your most meaningful commitment. And so given I'd already ordered my extracurriculars in this format, I decided rather than speaking about my time helping my parents at their store, which I knew I was going to cover later on in the written section, I decided to focus on a different activity that I knew I wouldn't have time or space to really delve into deeper. So I decided to talk about my time in the Spanish Honor Society, where we helped fundraise for Puerto Rico. We raised around $10,000, and we actually went in person to see how that money was being spent. So we spent some time with the nonprofit, giving out food, giving out resources to local people in the community. And so that was just a really impactful moment for me. And then that was also the year I was elected treasurer. So it felt like I was really getting involved. I was really helping directly with this effort. And it was also just really fun to travel. So anything you want to add, Farwa?
No, nothing to add.
And then the next part is just getting a sense of your family's finances. So most of this is pretty self-explanatory, but it's essentially the household income, what assets your parents have, what part of their income was taxed, what part of their income was untaxed. And then a large part of this is just corresponding to whether your student will be financially eligible for QuestBridge. And so Rachel previewed that the average family income for a family of 4 with minimal assets was $65,000. That was like their baseline criteria. They can be flexible here and there, but for the most part, that $65,000 is the ground truth that we want to emphasize to you guys. In New York, it is hard to make it with $65,000. Like New York's significantly expensive, more expensive than other parts of the country. So they can be flexible, but 65,000 is like the number that they advertise as their average income. So should keep that in mind. And then moving on. So the written section is a huge part of the application. And the short answers and the essays that you write for QuestBridge are unique to QuestBridge. So you're not going to be writing the same types of shorter responses or even responding to these prompts for the Common or Coalition apps. And even the section that the responses that I wrote, the prompts that I have screenshotted here might not be the same as to what they have this year. So I wouldn't hold this as being exactly what you're going to see on the application. This is just what I witnessed when I was going through the application around like 5 years ago. So the first like part we want to preview is there's 2 short answers that are each 200 words. So the first question was asking us to preview one of our proudest achievements or moments throughout high school and what it said about us. And so I spoke about just breaking out of my shell. And like, I used to be pretty shy as a kid. And so joining Model UN allowed me to really work on my public speaking skills. And then for my first conference, I was super nervous because I didn't know what to expect. And I did a bunch of background research for my position. I was chosen to be Kyrgyzstan, which is a country that's not super well known for within, and the topic was essentially trying to determine whether it's appropriate to institute sanctions on Iran for posing a nuclear threat. And so it was a topic that I hadn't researched previously, and it was a country that wasn't really well known, so I didn't think I'd get a lot of attention throughout the conference. But I did a lot of research for my position. I tried to be as outspoken as I could, and I was as I put an emphasis on trying to compromise with as many delegates as I could. And a lot of other delegates were at the conference tended to take more of a competitive approach. And so I think my approach stood out to the judges, and that was what allowed me to earn the best delegate award. And I was super proud of that because it was my first conference and I didn't know how it would turn out. So that was what I wrote about for the first essay here, or the first short response. And then the second short response I talked about, I went to a high school with a predominant focus on American history. And that context for that, I thought I wanted to do anthropology actually going to high school. So I had a very different perspective on professional ambitions coming to high school as like a 13-year-old. So I love to collect coins, and I just love to like learn random history trivia as a kid. And so I would also watch like National Geographic all the time. And so that was what persuaded me to actually attend my high school. But I realized there at high school that anthropology and history wasn't my core interest, or I felt that my time could be better spent in other fields. But besides that, I wanted to talk about a figure that I thought would be unique to my background and what I had learned in my school. And so we actually spent 3 years learning American history in my school, and the last year was our actual AP class. And so a lot of students in high schools, they'll only spend 1 year kind of going through 1 or 2 years at max going through like a US history curriculum from the colonial period to honestly like Carter's presidency, or like the late, even like the Reagan era in the late 1980s. But we spent 3 years and it was super deep in terms of the material we covered. And so I was able to touch on a lot of material from when we went over our unit of World War II. And so I ended up speaking about President Truman, who I thought had a really inspiring background, and someone that I looked up to in terms of how he was able to ascend from being a farmer in Missouri to the office of president. And so that was what I wrote about for that response. As far as anything you want to add?
Just that I really liked your approach to like being different, which is something that I also did. Like especially in the second prompt where it asks you about a historical figure or trigger from a book. There are certain people that are very commonly used, and you want to avoid like being the common, like, yeah, obviously they've done great things, but you also want to be able to stand out. So try to always think creatively and think outside of the box, and ask yourself, is this something that is common, or is somebody else going to be writing about this? Because you don't want to have 300 essays of this about the same person. Then there's no point. So you want to be able to stand out. So definitely think about instances where you were unique and you were different. That'll really help you out.
Yeah, for sure. It would have been really easy for me to write about Gandhi. Like that would have been a super easy write, but I was like, that's going to be so common that it's not going to be worth it, and it's not going to help me stand out. So that's why, like Farwa was saying, it's definitely helpful to bring a unique perspective to a lot of these questions and ask yourself, like, they're easy answers and then there's meaningful answers. And so you want to focus on like what actually brings meaning when you're essentially showcasing who you are to QuestBridge. And then the next set of short responses. So these are 35-word responses, really short prompts, asking about things like, what is your favorite subject? What are your favorite books? Source of inspiration? How do you spend a weekend? And so forth. And these were honestly just a lot chiller to write, like they're just trying to get to know you and like what you do outside of school and your extracurriculars and our like busy day-to-day lives. So I was like pretty honest here for the most part. Like I literally said I took power naps when they ask like how I rejuvenate after a challenging experience. And that's true. I still do that to this day. Like there'll be days where I'll just like knock out for 10 or 15 minutes. And Rachel was saying, you don't want to showcase parts of yourself that you're not proud about, but it's okay to be honest here. Just like we're all human beings. We're not going to be working 24/7. And so whatever activities and whatever commitments that you spend your time on, right? That's important to highlight. At the same time, it's also important to highlight that you have other sides to you. There are ways that you personally and spiritually, whatever that may be, decide to rejuvenate. And so this is like a great section to showcase like who you are as a person outside of everything you do. So okay.
I actually wanted to add on something. For this one, I don't know, I had a lot of fun doing these ones because like I get to really be myself, and you don't have to like overcomplicate yourself at all. Like just literally just be you. And try to think of like being creative. Again, going back to that. For the prompt that like it says, how do you spend a typical weekend? One thing that I did is I like didn't write sentences, I just wrote words like of what I did, like running, sleeping, like something like that. Like you want to be, just like think however you would write, just like try to make it interesting. And yeah, I'd say be different.
Yeah, definitely +1 on that. And then the last aspect that we're gonna go over, they don't have a 500-word essay, so we're gonna skip this part. But they do still have the 800-word essay, and from what I remember, they haven't changed this prompt to, at least I think it's gonna be pretty similar to what you guys will see this year for the application. But the question asks, we're interested in learning more about the context in which you've grown up, formed your aspirations, and accomplished your successes. And they want your student to describe what influential factors and challenges in their life had shaped them to the person that they became. And so this is a different perspective than what you're going to showcase on the personal statement, right? The personal statement, you have a series of prompts you can choose between, and you're really like honing in on this. You're trying to create a narrative based around a particular experience or particular activity or some sort of outlet that means a lot to you. That's the personal statement. It's a defined outlet or activity or experience that determined who your student became in terms of their identity. And this question is more of an overarching question in terms of like throughout your student's life, like what challenges have they faced? What have they had to overcome to get to the position that they're currently in? And so this is, rather than being focusing on a particular experience, like this is really a cumulative question in terms of like what formative experiences has your child had to get to where they are. School, and then realizing that I actually like math and science more, and then trying to fight for ways to push myself into harder math and science classes, and even going beyond my school's curriculum and trying to find programs outside my school. And then I also talked about in terms of like for my family, we lived in a rental apartment with 5 people in 2 bedrooms, and I have 2 older sisters, and they both had loans. One of them was in college at the time, the other one was in medical school. And so there was a lot that was going on for us. And so I was just honest about what was happening in my life and why I felt that I had been working on becoming a resilient person, and like what resilience really meant to me in terms of the unique obstacles I'd faced. But these 3 paragraphs just a preview from my full essay. And then the last part is a school profile. So this is now optional, but this just outlines like a brief overview of what school your student's at, and generally like what the profile is of students who go to that school. So what classes they take, where the school gets funding from, what the emphasis is on, when it was founded, etc. And then we also want to point you guys to some follow-up resources. So there's other webinars that QuestBridge has done and recorded on its website. There's also a bunch, like Rachel said, a bunch of like frequently asked questions you guys can can check out. That will definitely fulfill a lot of the initial kind of inquiries that might be coming up from this webinar. And then there's also reflections from prior QuestBridge National College Match finalists on YouTube. There are a few videos that I like, so I'm going to point out these two videos. One from Alex Alvarado, who was a finalist in 2020, which was the year after me, and then another one was Yusuf Hasway, who was a finalist in my year. Just really candid videos, just describing, similar to what I did, like how they applied to QuestBridge, what their background was, and just giving like an honest response in what getting to college meant for them and why they felt that QuestBridge gave them a unique opportunity to present their background. And then the last thing you want to showcase is there's a boot camp that Kweller Prep is offering later this summer. I'll let Francis speak a little bit more about that, but we just want to let you guys know this isn't the end of the route. And that was it for our webinar today. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to this email here. So info@kwellerprep.com. And we'll take questions for the next few minutes. Yeah, so I'm seeing a few questions pop up in the chat. So yeah, the first one asks, so if I'm not happy with an AP score and decide not to submit an AP score, is that okay? And my response to that would be yes, it is okay. You don't need to submit every single standardized test that you take. You can send the ones that you're most comfortable showing, or the ones that are most relevant to the subject that you're thinking about studying. But I ended up submitting all of my AP scores, and even though I got a 4 on one of my exams, and that was just to showcase that like I'm not a perfect student, but I tried to complement that score by taking the SAT 2 for world history and showing that even though I didn't do super well in the AP, I still knew the material really well. And so that was like a way for me to just preview my full test record, but you don't have to submit everything. And then the question about why MIT is non-binding. So I'm assuming this is for the match process. So that's a great question. When I was applying, there were more schools that were non-binding. So I think for now, the reason that MIT is the only school that's non-binding is because they really want you to consider all your options when you're applying. And so if there are other schools that might be of interest to your student, like MIT acknowledges that like a lot of QuestBridge students are going to be applying to a lot of different schools. And so even if they choose your student, if they accept your student for a full ride match scholarship, they're not going to force your student to come just because they know that your student is most likely talented and has other options. They want to make sure that if they want to come, it's because they genuinely want to be at MIT rather than being forced to be there. Okay, another question is what happened if you had a rough term at school in terms of grades? So that's totally okay. There are areas of the application where you can explain any sort of personal circumstances or extenuating issues that might have come up throughout high school. And so they usually give around, when I applied, it was like 2,000 characters to explain any extra information about yourself. And so that's the section where you could explain if something happened in terms of a rough term. For Regents exams, those are, because they're specific to New York State, you can submit them, but they won't be taken with the same gravity of like relevance as something like a national exam, standardized exam like the SAT or AP or IB exams will. So I ended up not submitting my Regents exams because QuestBridge also didn't ask for them. So okay, another question. So someone's thinking about applying to QuestBridge partners in New York. So schools like Cornell and Columbia, but also NYU. Does this and they're asking if they can't apply to NYU. So I'm assuming this is what in reference to what Rachel said in terms of like if you're applying to, so this is only if your student gets in through into the National College Match Finalist Program. So if your student is nominated as a finalist, then they're restricted in the early action, early decision rounds to only apply outside of QuestBridge to local schools that are public and non-binding. But if you don't get in to the finals program, that's also okay. You're free to do whatever you wish. And after the early action, early decision rounds, you're going to be open to apply to any schools that you want to in the regular decision round. Just for the early action, early decision rounds, they're going to be a little bit more restrictive. And then question about my average in junior year. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it was around like a 99 unweighted. I spent a lot of time in school studying. And so that was like a very heavy focus for me, just like trying to excel as well as I could academically. And my work-life balance wasn't great. So that was something I've worked on through college, but yeah. Okay, awesome. So it's 8:07. So I think we're going to conclude the webinar now, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. Francis, are you still there? Okay. So I think Francis dropped, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. That's the end of our webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to info@kwellerprep.com. And we'll also be hosting a boot camp later this summer. Farwa is going to be leading that boot camp actually, and I'm going to be tuning in for most likely the last day. If you want to get more advice on how you can format your student's QuestBridge profile, if you think that your student is going to be eligible. So I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you guys so much again.